All right, welcome to the AAGT Inform series, Responding with Solutions for Gifted Education in Uncertain Times. We are already at episode 9. We have had such a good response for our webcast, and we thank you all for joining us again today. This will be a very special one in that we have had several requests to address the needs of twice exceptional students. And we have in our very own community of AAGT, Julie Gunnigle, who is a parent of 3 twice exceptional children. So we are so happy that Cherrie Vierra-Lonkar and Julie Gunnigle are with us today to help us sort out some of this. What does it take to parent these children? What are some hints that we can come away with to help us in our own lives? So thank you again for joining us. We want to welcome Counselor Cherrie Vierra-Lonkar. She is the founder of Branching Out Family Services. Cherrie's dream was to create a new approach to supporting families just like theirs. In addition to being behavioral health professionals, Cherrie and her husband Brian are both special needs and adoptive parents. Julie Gunnigle was born and raised in Arizona and currently lives within a mile of the school that she attended growing up. She is a former professor of law, a current solo practitioner, a mother of 3 gifted 2E kids, and former prosecutor who now is running for Maricopa County Attorney. In her free time, Julie is the AAGT past president. She's a marathon runner, and she is a master at the game of set, which I have witnessed, so I can tell you for sure. Yep, I have. So I'm sure we will all learn a lot from Cherrie and Julie, so thank you for being here. Just a couple of announcements that we're going to share with you. If you have any questions, you can put them into the chat. If you want them answered right away, if you can put them in the Q&A, that would probably help. We will address those at the end. We are asking you to consider becoming a member of AAGT if you aren't already. It's members who have helped to make this possible for us. We really appreciate your support. In addition to all of the wonderful things that we provide for you on our website and our ability to come to you when you're in need, our annual conference and the Parent Institute, we have a membership perk. Once you join, you can sign up for Renzulli Learning Classroom, teachers can, for a 6-month trial, and parents can receive a 1-year free subscription to Renzulli Learning Home Edition. So if you're not sure what Renzulli Learning is, just look them up on the web and you're going to be quite impressed. It's very good enrichment opportunity for a lot of our kids. All right, so Parent Institute is coming up on October 17th. Keynote speaker is Otto Siegel. Please go to arizonagifted.org and register now. Parents, educators, grandparents, anybody who is involved in the life of gifted kids is welcome to attend. So please join us. Next Wednesday, another special guest is Peter Lang. And Peter is going to actually talk about advocacy for gifted kids. And he's going to frame it around not only what's going on in government and how our money flows to us, but he's also going to talk about being a parent advocate with your school child and how you can address what your child needs in a way that will probably be beneficial to your child. The school district will hear what you have to say and you will be able to make some changes. Peter's very effective in advocacy and will be able to give you some really good tips. He's also going to share with you the streaming funds as a result of the pandemic that your school is receiving and which of those can be used for gifted education. It may not be something that all school districts are thinking about right now. So it's up to us as teachers, as educators, as parents to inform our school that there are monies available that can be used for gifted, and this is what we would like to see. So please join us on September 2nd. All right, so thank you again, Julie and Cherrie, for being with us. We can't wait to get started. So I'm sure we're all going to come away with a lot of information. So thanks for being here again.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. So hello, everybody out in the Zoom world. I'm Julie Gunnigle. Just a little bit about me, and thank you, Donna, so much for that warm welcome. I got involved with the Arizona Association for Gifted and Talented because I had a child who was twice exceptional. Just a little bit about my story. My son, who is now 12, we were expelled or politely asked to leave 9 different programs before first grade. And during that particular process, I just saw, and especially with your first and your oldest, I just saw how difficult it was for parents to find these sorts of resources for twice exceptional children, and how there oftentimes aren't any good answers, and there's certainly no right answers as you're trying to figure out things like fit and how to best provide the best education that you can for your kiddo. So I just want to get it started today with one of my very dear friends and, and true expert in this area. But before we do, I want to, acknowledge that's a real struggle, and that we're all in this together, and that first, it shouldn't be so hard. And that second, the mere fact that my child has been able to get his needs met really does come from a place of privilege. Not everybody was able to do what we did, and I had to end up going flex time at work to be able to provide, especially in those early years of education. So I'm hoping that today you walk away with some good resources and hopefully some inspiration in what is a very trying time of crisis schooling for a lot of us, for our kiddos. And without any further ado, I'd like to toss this over to my friend Cherrie to introduce herself and what branching out does.
Hi, Julie. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So I am a counselor and a mom of 6, 3 of whom we adopted out of foster care, and, have completely different biology and everything than I do. So, it's interesting learning to advocate and understand kids that, aren't just a chip off the old block. And so I've kind of been thrust into this through that. I realized as a counselor that we were not supporting families like ours. My industry was not supporting it. Families like ours adequately. We had, if I had parents saying things like, if I hear sticker chart one more time, I'm gonna scream. But we had so many of these kids, overrepresented behaviorally in the schools and undersupported. And so I said, one of my favorite sayings is, create the things you wish you existed. So I created an organization that is exactly what I needed. And so we support special needs, twice exceptional, developmentally disabled families, the whole kind of spectrum there, from everything from getting a diagnosis to learning all of the different revenue streams, to getting care coordination, getting advocacy with your school, all of that, and it doesn't cost families anything. So we've been really proud that we're able to provide all those programs all the way down to like therapeutic recreation and, self-care groups for parents and things like that. So we are now contracted with the state of Arizona through Department of Developmental Disabilities. So that allows us to provide all of our services at no cost to families.
So we've known each other for a while, but it wasn't until, last weekend that I learned that I knew you were a gifted person yourself, but you graduated high school crazy early.
Yeah, so I graduated high school at 16 years old and went right into college in the professional world. I was working at Bank of America at 16. So there was a lot of focus, I think, myself growing up, in the 80s about kind of GATE programs, right? The, gifted and talented education programs. Also, ADHD was kind of just on, everybody's the front of mind for people. As everybody remembers in the 80s, everyone had ADHD. And So I think I kind of fell into this, she's a daydreamer, she's not motivated, but also being bored and really well behaved and quiet. So she doesn't have ADHD, but she's not getting her work done, but she's very smart kind of thing. And so kind of going through that. And then once I kind of got my groove and realized I had ADD, that I didn't have the hyperactivity, and started addressing that. And then I just took off and finished college at 19. And I'm certainly no Thomas, but I can relate to the system not necessarily being built for me. Yeah. And then now we've got Miles, our son that we adopted and is extremely intellectually gifted, but also has autism. And so he struggles socially, and he's 13 now. And yeah, he's about as awkward as you can get.
So my question then to you, and I think the question on everybody's mind is, I mean, what do we do? Especially, so where I'm coming from is, my oldest is ASD. Transitions are really, really difficult. And our entire world right now is in transition. Nobody knows what's going on. I feel like there's very little certainty. It's hard on me. I can only imagine what it's like on him. Can you give us a magic bullet? What do we do in this scenario?
So I hate to tell you, there is not a magic bullet. There are some layers here that we can kind of tackle and ways to kind of self. So first thing is Restructure. We can't control what's going on in the world. We can't control when schools go back in person. We can't control when our therapies are going to go back in place, whether it's, speech, OT, so many of our kids really rely on the sensory support of OT services. And I've heard just from so many parents that the online OT is just not anyone's jam. It's just not working out great for kids. And so that kind of dysregulation can really throw everything for a loop. So just recognizing where as a parent you do have control and creating structure around that. So lots of, rituals, maybe saying the same thing every single day as they go to do a certain task. If it's time to brush teeth or something like that, doing it in the same way every single time, setting up, your computer for their classes or whatever in the same way every time, trying to create that consistency. So it at least gives a small sense of predictability and routine. I know this is one that, kind of is a little bit pie in the sky feeling, but self-care right now is a really ignored and kind of hard thing for parents to even conceptualize right now in the midst of all of this. But what I'm seeing with the families that we work with, and I mean, we have a pretty big staff. I think we've got about 125 interventionists working with us right now, and they are all reporting back the same things, that parents are getting so burned out and parents are so frazzled trying to keep all of the balls in the air. And what I'm really, really, trying to impress upon parents is that it is time, whether you feel like it or not, whether you feel like you're at a breaking point or not. If you've ever waited for a sign as to when to find a killer for yourself, it's right now. Do it right now before you're on the edge. Because right now we don't have our natural supports around us as a community right now. We don't have our own routines. And, for a lot of our kids, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. So when it comes to them needing routines, we kind of do too, right? And so we're not seeing our same people and doing our same exercises and, heading to the office and picking up your coffee the same way and all of that. So really understanding that about yourself and modeling for your kids that it's important. I have to do this for me. I have to be the best me I can to support you. So that's my number one thing I'm trying to get parents to do. And if anybody needs referrals or support with that, feel free to shoot us an email or on our Facebook at Branching Out, and I will gladly send you some really great referrals to people who understand kids like ours and understand the stress that comes along and sometimes the isolation that can come along with parenting them, okay? I would also, you know, really evaluate all of your options right now, because like Julie said, there is, you know, some level of privilege in a lot of this for most of us, and not everybody has the opportunity to work from home or flex or, you know, do any of that kind of stuff. So really understanding what your options are and what your different funding sources are. So should we start with just public school?
Sorry. Yeah, what are our options right now when it comes to schooling? Recognizing, and I think that's maybe the best starting point, insofar as it exists in my mind, is that every single choice is going to have risks and benefits. And right now, a lot of those risks are very real and tangible. So what's out there for parents?
So what we're seeing a lot of is people going in person to private schools. We are seeing people doing online with public schooling, and we're seeing people homeschool, just opting out altogether, and maybe going the community college route, something like that, or looking into microschooling. And I don't really have a preference about how you do it, because everybody knows their family and their child's needs best. Some kids just truly need the amount of support that a special ed department can bring, and the amount of, you know, expertise that they can bring to the table. And sometimes online is just not going to be an option for some kids. So I think it's important to just recognize that it's like Julie said, there's going to be pros and cons to all of it, and you just have to kind of measure what's sustainable for your family.
Well, I guess that's my first question. Like, what kind of questions should we be asking as we're trying to navigate through this really uncertain territory?
Okay, so first off, you need to be asking yourself, what is my own bandwidth? What can I support and sustain throughout this school year? Some of us can say, you know, I'm going to take FMLA, or I'm going to take whatever, let's get through the first semester or first quarter, and then we'll figure it out from there. And that's fine. But you need to have all your plans in place for what your bandwidth and what your sustainable plan is going to be after that time is up. Because I think all of us starting back in March thought, you know, okay, give it another month. It's going to start to get better. Give it another month. And as we're seeing, it continues to kind of grow and be a challenge. So I'm discouraging parents from having too much anticipation about second semester being so much better than first semester. So kind of expect the best, but plan for the worst. So if you're somebody who cannot work from home, has a child that's too involved for you to be able to multitask, I would really encourage you to talk to your HR department, because there are some programs built into the CARES Act that some may be familiar with, others may not. HR departments aren't really, you know, talking too much about them because they don't really want you to take them, but there are some legal protections there. So first off, let's go ahead and go through those. I'm going to look at my notes just because I don't want to misquote anything for you guys. Let's see. Okay, so you can do emergency FMLA and get paid up to $10,000 total for that. Once you hit the $10,000 mark, if you still have more weeks left on the FMLA, it would be unpaid at that point, but you buy yourself a little time that way. There's emergency paid sick leave. And that emergency paid sick leave also covers if your child can't be on campus, that is considered sick leave as well. So there are options to continue to get paid and have your job protected while you're away. But just keep in mind that if you're taking FMLA, you can't also be checking in online. You have to be like completely off of work to do that. So those are a few options. And I know some families have swapped out spouses doing that so that they can maximize the amount of time and benefit out of that so that they can be available for homeschooling or, you know, kind of tech support and redirection for kids. So then we talk about, you know, our public schools, and, you know, I always direct people to public schools first. Each district is a little bit different right now. And, you know, from what we're understanding from educators and, you know, team members, is that the districts kind of, a lot of them don't really know what they're going to be doing quite yet either. They're kind of putting together some loose plans, but you know, everything is very fluid still. And, you know, as we're approaching cold and flu season, I think everybody's expecting campus shutdowns again, and things like that. So what you really want to be talking about is your child's individual education plan. So if your child has an IEP, that's a great thing. So hopefully your children do. If they have an IEP, or if they don't, I'm sure if they don't have one, Julie can recommend lots of advocacy outlets for you. But if you have an IEP, they are still required to meet your child's needs. That is a legal document. It's a little bit murky right now how that's all going to play out, and if there's going to be a lot of repercussions for not fulfilling it, right, Julie? Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, there was a beautiful piece, and maybe I can find the link and post it in the chat for everyone, about just how murky it is with respect to those obligations during a pandemic. The answer is that nobody really knows, even the lawyers who typically know everything.
Yeah.
Or think they know everything. How about that?
Right. So if you're in a situation where your campus is not going to be opening, but your child needs to be on campus, you can really push forward with trying to get a self-classroom and a space for your child to learn on campus. But we have to keep in mind with doing this, yes, there are additional risk, but there's not as many resources available to them if we do send them back to be in a self-contained learning environment. Have special needs does qualify them in most cases to return to campus, even if the campus is closed. But there are fewer resources. The route is going to be very different. So it may be kind of just a snowball continuation of struggle for your child. Another option that I'm doing a lot is the private schools. If you definitely your child back on campus, we know that, you know, many private schools do have fewer resources in terms of gifted education and things like that. Your child may be maybe the only one or one of a few on the campus, so it might be a bit of a learning curve. The other options are ESA, and I don't know, you know, if everyone's familiar with ESA, but that's the Arizona Empowerment Scholarship. Most of our kids should qualify for that, and that allows you, if you know the other schooling options aren't meeting your child's need, that allows you to take their Department of Education money on a debit card and use it for educational purposes as you see fit. And so that can be hiring a teacher, it can be community college, it can be, you know, private curriculum, things like that. But that is going to require a lot of manpower from parents to execute that. So again, has its pros and cons. And then we're seeing a lot of people doing microschooling. And so that's a really interesting concept that I think, you know, many of our families are probably more familiar with than the general population, just out of it being born of necessity when classrooms can't accommodate our children's needs. So is essentially a small group of children, kind of their families making an agreement that we all have the same guidelines that we're going to honor regarding social distancing, and we either homeschool together or we hire an instructor together, and our kids meet daily or, you know, several times a week to do school. And so that's something that you can use ESA to pay for. And then in terms of other supports, like what may be available through the state outside of the educational system, would you guys like me to share some of that? Yeah.
Oh, heck yes. Before we get there, I do have a few, I guess, questions that are kind of rolling in. And one of them is one of the pervasive problems we've seen within the twice exceptional community is sometimes how difficult it is to get an IEP or a 504. You know, many of these kiddos continue to perform, you know, at or above grade level. And oftentimes it's hard to see that there is an underlying disability that needs to be addressed. And it takes parents quite a bit to fight to get that acknowledgement and then to get those supports in place. And I was wondering what, if anything, you'd heard or experienced with respect to parents who want to start that process during a pandemic, because it really is a brave new world. How do you get a multidisciplinary evaluation team together if you can't even be in the same room?
So the way that's working right now, at least with most of our East Valley districts, which is where our offices are based out of, it looks like it's pretty much been across the board digital. And so what I'm, you know, referring parents to is what the instructions I always give them. Write your request put it in writing, mail it, signature required, so that you can still, you know, even though it's a little murky, we want to keep our side of the street clean in terms of keeping track of time clocks and when notice was given, and, you know, all of that. Keep your documentation really clear. Because the school district, we love them, but this is very murky, and they may kind of lean into that murkiness with their timelines, but we don't want to be the one responsible for slowing things down. So let's keep our end really clean, send everything in writing, and then being really clear with your own documentation. So my recommendations for families is always, and this may be a little controversial, I always recommend that families get their own evaluations done, not through the district. And that can be accomplished through an IEE, which is district funded independent evaluation, where you choose the clinician and you take your child independently to be evaluated, or just using your health insurance. And if anybody needs recommendations or referrals, I'm happy to provide that. One thing to consider when you're doing that is that some diagnostic centers and clinicians will say, I don't take insurance. Don't let that scare you. They do take insurance. They just won't send your bill for you. You have to do it yourself. So all that means is they'll print out a super bill for you. You drop it in the mail to your insurance company and you get reimbursed for an out-of-network assessment. Okay. So that's my first take in getting that, because you really, for me, I find that clinical assessments tend to yield more complete results than the reports I tend to see from school districts. And then I think just being diligent and being polite and, you know, continuing to follow up with your emails about getting things scheduled, being really flexible about your time, being really appreciative, verbally appreciative of their support and all of that when you're dealing with the district. One strategy that I always share with families, is this a good time to share my assessing emotional motivation? So whenever you're dealing with somebody that you need something from, like when you're advocating for your child, you need them to give a damn. You need them to care about your child. And it's really easy, particularly when you're talking about you know, somebody who works among multiple schools and sees, you know, hundreds of kids and all of that, getting them invested in your child. So I always tell parents to think about this person as an individual and not their job title. It's really easy for us to feel like really get our dukes up when we're dealing with the district, or, you know, anyone when it comes to our child. Our mama bear comes out big time, right? But it's important to think about the person you're dealing with, whether it's a doctor's office, the school, whatever, as an individual, and really think about what kind of person chooses this type of job. So most of these people who are here to help our kids are in helping fields, and they were motivated to do this because they wanted to help kids. And sometimes, you know, they become a cog in the wheel of a system that's, you know, not meeting the needs of our child, but it's not necessarily a reflection on their intention. So seeing them as an individual, acknowledging that this job isn't easy, and they must, you know, really see lots of unfortunate stuff, like, you know, kids who really need support that they can't give, you know, they can't provide it, and things like that. And just acknowledging their role can really soften people. I always send an email. Every email I send has a picture of my child in it, because I want them to see that this is a person, that this is a kid that's struggling, not just a file on their desk. So really trying to personalize your appeals is always helpful. Using people's names, you know, I often show up to meetings always with, you know, Dunkin' Donuts coffee or Starbucks or something for the room, things like that, just to kind of set the tone of appreciation and, you know, sincere gratitude and need for support can really soften people sometimes.
I love that that's your angle. It's one more reason I adore you, because these are really difficult fields and really difficult questions.
Yeah.
And as I've been trying to navigate some of these questions, you know, with my own district and for my own kids, which, by the way, advocating for your own children is an entirely different ball of wax. And I say that as an attorney. It is so much easier to go in there and advocate for someone else's child than it is to get it right for your own, because there's so many emotions that are in there. And I'm grateful to hear you say, you know, things like that, and that we need to be cutting everybody some grace right now as well, because it's just really difficult.
Well, and the thing is, we get more with honey than we do with vinegar, right? And if this person isn't going to be able to help you, at least they're invested in what happens to your kid, you know, because they like you and they want to see your kid get the help, and they probably feel bad that if they're not the one who can help them. So you're probably going to get more support in terms of documentation and recommendations and all of that if you're able to really give some grace and appreciation.
So on top of what's available, you know, at our school districts and things we should be thinking about with advocacy, you mentioned that there might be additional state resources that parents should be thinking.
Right.
What are those?
So it's my understanding that quite a few of the families in this organization have a child that might may have autism or epilepsy. If your child does have one of those two diagnoses, you should qualify for Arizona long-term care. Now, I know what those of you are going to say. My child won't qualify. They're too high functioning. They're too, you know, the giftedness gets in the way.
And we need to circle back on that term high functioning, just FYI, but
right.
Yes.
I need everybody to take that out of their vocabulary. Stop shooting yourself in the foot, guys. So even if you think you don't qualify for All-Tex and DDD through the state of Arizona, or if you've applied in the past and been denied, reach out to us. We are happy to give you some guidance, because you should and can qualify. And so kind of the benefits of what that does for you is it opens up some additional funding sources. So and supports. Not only is it secondary health insurance that is like amazing secondary health insurance, you don't ever pay your deductible ever again, because this insurance ends up covering it for you by default. And that's for your whole family, right? So it's great insurance to have for your kid. It also will cover all of your speech, OT, PT, music therapy, any of that kind of stuff. that your private insurance probably covers too, but you may be able to get additional sessions. You may be able to get them to just come to your home and do it in person, as opposed to trying to get you to do it digitally, which so many families are struggling with the Zoom stuff. So with that insurance, the insurance will actually cover the cost of the person, the therapist coming to your home. And it will also give you community and social supports, which no other insurance does. So that means they give you 600 plus hours of respite per year, attendant care, which is supervision, help with shopping, help with laundry, help with all of that kind of stuff to help you stay afloat. And they also give you habilitation, which is a lot of the stuff that our kids struggle with are life skills. They may be fantastic at math equations, but in terms of trying to just manage life and be organized with their schoolwork and, keep up with just daily living type things, they'll send a professional to come to your house and coach them multiple hours per week. So you could potentially, by not trying to get DDD all techs, be shorting yourself out of what could be a full-time staff of support for you and your child in your home with your family. And what a lot of people don't realize is that you don't necessarily have to have people you don't know coming into your house and working with your child. If you've gotten medical issues that you need to be really careful about who comes into your home, there's lots of agencies, including ours, who can train and certify anyone in your life to be those providers for your child. So, if you've got somebody, a neighbor, a friend, a teacher, or a teacher's aide who may not be working right now, who could be a really supportive, force in your child's life. We've been training and employing people all digitally lately to try to meet those needs for families. And so there's a lot of life rafts built into the DDD all tech system that I think a lot of families don't realize. And it's so easy to go through that process initially when your child gets diagnosed and you get referred to apply for DDD, kind of with our mom goggles on, I say. And so there's a lot of ways to get yourself approved for it. And there's lots of agencies, mine included, who can give you some guidance in that regard. So that's a big one, because parents can be going back to work. They can be working remotely, uninterrupted, while their child's needs are being met. So so that's an additional funding source.
So we're starting to get some questions in the chat.
Okay.
One in particular from Jennifer. She asked, do you have any advice or resources to support with school refusal?
The child refusing to do school, or from the school refusing to give help?
That's so funny, because I read it one way, and it can definitely be either.
Uh-huh.
So maybe we start with the school refusal, because I know that you had some tips. Maybe we can talk about
From the school.
Oh, child refusing school. There we go. Thank you, Jennifer.
Child refusing school. Yeah, this one's going to be really hard. So again, our kids have had a very unfortunate extended spring break, and it is really hard to get back into the swing of things with non-preferred activities. If it was their preferred, obsession, it would be no problem. But because it's, we're asking them to do all of these different subjects and sit and all of that, that's just not as enticing. So it's gonna be an ugly first couple of weeks, I think. I always try to promote a connected parenting approach, as opposed to kind of like a legalistic approach. But there's going to be some times, I think, where we as parents are just going to have to say, like, this is just going to be the way it is for a little bit. You're going to have a meltdown for a little bit, and that's going to be okay. I'm here. I'm going to keep you safe. I'm not going to give it a lot of attention. Just start to wear that down, that we're not always going to have an alternative, kind of taking that, that ABA approach of every behavior serves a function. What is the function of the behavior? And once we kind of figure out what the function of the behavior and the response is, hopefully that can give us a little bit of guidance. So for me with my kids, what I had to do was quite literally take TV remotes and put them in a locked box, like a PIN code box, like they're locked up. And, you know, I've had to kind of create my home with lots of visual boundaries as to how we're going to be able to do this, being really limiting with technology, which is hard because we're like, here's a computer, do school, but also really do school, you know, and and you're trying to work for most of us, right? And be on the phone. And so it's much easier if they just go sit somewhere else. So things that I'm with my own family kind of putting into use is the Disney Circle device, which kind of ruins a lot of the fun for them. Right through an app on your phone, I can pause certain devices. I can block certain things at certain times of the day on certain devices. I can shut down the entire internet for the whole house with a push of a button and turn it back on once there's cooperation. So there is kind of like, you know, the ABA method of dangling the carrot that has been kind of helpful for me. And sometimes just being in a different location altogether can be a little bit better. At home, a lot of our kids feel like that is their soft place to fall. That is their place where they don't have to connect so much. They're allowed to just be around people that understand them and don't ask them to be on, you know. And when we're doing a lot of digital learning, we're asking kids to be on a lot. And one thing we're not thinking about too is that when we're doing Zoom or, you know, like Google Classroom and things like that, there is a lot of eye contact involved. A lot of even unintentional eye contact, and that is a lot. So for my 5-year-old, he struggles a lot with eye contact and sensory stuff. And you know, we're not sure if he's got autism. I'm fairly certain he does. But the minute a face comes up on the screen, he is out of there. And it's just too intense for some kids. So, you know, it can be hard to do digital learning that way. Sometimes going to someone else's house. So if we have a grandma or a neighbor maybe who goes to work during the day and you're friends with, who would let you go over to their kitchen table so that there is that visual boundary of this is what I do during this time in this space, and there's no other options while I'm here. Grandparents' houses can be great for that. So those are kind of some of my suggestions. That's not an easy one though, so I apologize for not having a silver bullet.
And not that I do either, but what I didn't hear in that list was bribery, which is working really well in the Gunnigle household right now.
I call it dangling the carrot. It's motivation.
So we don't eat out anymore because, you know, safety. And what we've done instead is basically blow the entire restaurant budget on Legos. So we have this enormous kitchen table, and it is entirely covered with Lego Ninjago right now. And it's awesome. And it gives them a space. It gives them something to look forward to after 3 o'clock. And honestly, it's kind of fun for me too.
Yeah.
Okay, we have more questions before we wrap it up. More tips for teachers to work with our twice exceptional kids.
Oh, bless your hearts. Oh my goodness, our teachers are amazing. You guys are so good at what you do, but I think just acknowledging the challenges, showing up, being prepared, being as prepared as possible, being as communicative with parents as possible, because what happened before school and what happens after school deeply, deeply impact what happens during their learning time. I know it's really hard for some of our teachers and our administrators, going back to that IEP thing, saying, well, we don't see that at school. You know, we see cooperation at school. We see they're accessing the curriculum. We're not seeing that here. And really understanding that they feed into each other. So I would talk a lot to parents about what happens after school, and how the child, because that restraint fatigue tends to collapse when they get in the car. And so that's really a sign of how they're managing during the day. It shouldn't be that hard for a child to manage during the day, you know, and contain their impulses and all of that kind of thing. So if they're struggling after school, that means something at school is lacking support in some way. And so helping parents advocate for that is amazing. Really, I know it's really hard to speak up and kind of, you know, especially for younger teachers who don't have as many years with districts. I know that's a lot harder to be vocal sometimes, but that's honestly the best thing you can do for our kids and for the parents, is to really not be afraid to speak up, put things in writing, and really work with the parent and acknowledge that what happened after school is a result of what happened at school.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, we're almost at time, but before we leave, and because you mentioned it, can you, for the uninitiated, explain why we should banish high and low functioning binary talk from our vocabulary?
Because it's not useful in any way. There's lots of reasons. When we kind of break it down from a human behavior standpoint, the labels are for you. It's for your own comfort level, and it's not for your child's benefit to use it. If it's, you know, saying my child is high functioning, that's a function of meeting your own emotional need, that this is hard for you and you feel like maybe there's some shame or blame, or what could I have done differently? And so you're kind of soothing yourself by saying that, and it doesn't benefit your child because it sets the tone that they don't necessarily need support because they're functioning enough that they're barely even, you know, on the radar kind of deal. Also, it puts a lot of kind of undue pressure on children. Whether it's high functioning or low functioning, we are like putting our expectations onto a child, and that impacts who they grow up to be. So, and kind of having one thing be acceptable and the other not be acceptable so much, kind of creates division, shame, you know, exceptionalism to a new degree, you know, kind of in there. And also, we need people to care about our kids. We need people to want to go to bat for them. So we need to stop telling them who our kids are before they've met them.
And I think that's the beautiful part to wrap it up on. Cherrie, I'm so grateful that you were able to join us today, and everybody out there in the Zoom webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. You can hear my kids stimming in the other room.
I know.
We'll post the resources into the chat box, and I'm going to let Donna Campbell, you know, take us home. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Cherrie and Julie, you have been absolutely marvelous. And I took several notes here. I'm a grandparent of 2 little boys that are struggling. And the anticipation of going back to school is ramping up here. So I fully understand all of this. I wanted to tell you, Cherrie, I really appreciated what you said about caring. You know, parents need to care for themselves, and so do teachers. You know, that self-care is so important. You cannot be effective unless you do that. So I hope that a lot of people heard that message as well. There was one other thing that, you know, what Julie has taught me with her experience with her kids is the importance of focusing on the strength, the giftedness, and that really helps whatever other issues are going on in their lives. If they have the opportunity and they have somebody that validates that part of their life. Do you have some words of wisdom about that?
I do. So this is a very, very defined line in the sand that I really try to have parents understand, is that when it comes to advocating for their child, it is not focusing on strengths and the proud parent moment necessarily, because we need all of those resources available to us. But that stops when we walk out of that office door. That stops when we hang up the phone. When we're engaging with our child, it helps to really see the strengths and really, you know, continue to ask ourselves, is this my expectation, or is this what I want, or is this what they want? You know, and really just choosing to allow your children to be who they are and accept who they are, even if that plan, if it looks like a different plan than what you had for them.
Thank you. Julie, do you have anything to add to that?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Ah, excellent. Well, thank you so much. And at the end of this broadcast, you're going to see the opportunity to fill in a survey. And once you do that, that's really going to help us to find some other things that we can do to help you, some other topics to address. And also, we just need some of that feedback, how all of this is going for you. We hope that you have enjoyed this session. Once you do that, you will receive your gifted enrichment certificate. So be sure to do that. And thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you next week, September 2nd. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.